From the distant horizon, ships trace into the turquoise harbor like bees on blue sky returning to their hive. They come to Troas from across the Mediterranean basin and funnel northward, following the Aegean to this, the westernmost tip of Asia. From here, not far across the watery divide, stands Greece and the heart of the Roman Empire. Troas is a place where east meets the sea, and where the sea opens westward to opportunity. This port city is the perfect launchpad for European expedition. So it was for Paul, for it was here where the apostle, during his second missionary journey, first received a vision summoning him to Macedonia, a call for help that propelled the gospel into Europe, all the way to the glorious cities of Athens and Corinth. That seminal moment, the Macedonian call, has since become metaphorical for the task of Christian missions and archetypal of Paul's ambition as a pioneer evangelist. Perhaps that missionary compulsion led Paul back to Troas on his third journey. After spending nearly 3 years in Asia Minor's Ephesus working at his trade, teaching daily in the hall of Tyrannus, and ministering in private homes, Paul was ready to move on. He desired to return and visit the believers in Macedonia and Greece, retracing his steps as was his custom. His excursion would again begin in Troas. In his second letter to the Corinthian church, Paul tells the story of that second visit to Troas. A door was opened for me in the Lord. Paul's way of saying that the power of God's Spirit was on display as people heard and believed the gospel. Here again, this metaphor is one Christians still employ today. Missionaries, following Paul's example, long and pray for such an occasion, for a door to be opened to declare the message of Christ. Striking, though, is what Paul recounts next. That moment, when the Holy Spirit was at work and the gospel was bearing fruit, Paul left. As my teenaged son would say, "Wait, what?" What could lead Paul, the pioneer missionary with a driving passion to reach the unreached, to walk away from an open door? What was it that, while not incredibly urgent, became for Paul more important? From his letter to the Corinthians, we discover that Paul had apparently come to Troas with multiple intentions. Among them, he wanted to preach the gospel. But Troas was a rendezvous point. Paul was there waiting for his colleague, Titus, likely due any day on board a ship from Corinth. And Paul was concerned about the news he would bring. Had the Corinthian church received Paul's message and his messenger? How did they respond to the apostle's stinging rebuke? Was their relationship intact or in ruins? Perhaps every so often Paul would venture out onto the docks or ascend the craggy cliffs overlooking Troas's harbor and spy for the latest ship arriving from the west. As time wore on and Titus didn't show, Paul says he became unsettled. Despite the incredible opportunity for witness before him, anxiety grew within him. He was disturbed to the point of abandoning Troas again for a second time. Evangelization of the world in our lifetime. As early as 1900, at the turn of the last century, John R. Mott put to page what had already become the rallying cry of the student volunteer movement for foreign missions: the evangelization of the world in this generation. As a burgeoning Protestant organization made up of ambitious young people from Western nations such as the United States, Canada, Great Britain, and Ireland, these students saw the urgent global need and unprecedented opportunity to take the gospel to the whole world in their lifetimes. They believed it could be done. Looking back on these youthful forebears from an optimistic era, we might be tempted to snicker at such audacity. With the clarity of hindsight, we can now see how that vision was destined for failure. In fact, we could note that the glowing enthusiasm of many Protestants in that day didn't materialize into global evangelization, but instead faded in the shadows of world wars. Yet from the darkness of World War II, a new generation of missionaries and strategists emerged that once again roused the Church to consider her role in the world and the possibility of reaching the uttermost parts of the earth.